Professor, you're already affiliated for the second year with Saint-Petersburg State University in Faculty of Economics. And you know, of course, that the Faculty of Economics and St. Petersburg State University generally already had some Nobel Prize winners among the alumnus and among the professors. And while considering that, maybe you can say something about your consideration of the scientific potential of the Faculty of Economics of St. Petersburg State University.
Well, my work at the St. Petersburg State University is related to the Growth Laboratory, whose main function is to produce research on the Russian economy and especially on Russian economic prospects. It's work in progress. We started, as you said, just over a year ago, and we have 5 researchers working with me here. And I expect, or I hope, and what the expectation is that we will produce work that should be of relevance to the framework for the Russian economic growth, any policy-related work, policy recommendations, how to improve these prospects for growth, and anything related to employment, to making growth benefit more people in Russia, and generally how to increase incomes in this country.
Are there any contacts with the field of teaching, lecturing? Are the students or postgraduate students, master students or bachelor students can get any knowledge or information from the lab, or maybe it is planned for future?
Well, in the first year that I was here, I think I did 2 or 3 lectures to the students, so there has been some direct communication. But the idea of the lab, though, and research is that you produce research which is used by students later on when the publications start coming. It's not an activity that will involve students, especially undergraduates or master students, directly. Now, PhD students could potentially work here as part of their PhD, and we would welcome students who need advice on the topics of the lab. But the idea of university research is that it's like an investment which has returns in the future, which are used for future generations to educate themselves in the topics of the research.
It is a great honor for St. Petersburg State University to work with you. And what is your opinion upon the role which Nobel Prize winners playing in modern science and education?
Well, to begin with, in order to get a prize like the Nobel Prize, you have to have done work that has influenced the way the profession is going and the way the profession does its research. And my work has been on labor markets. So the people in St. Petersburg State University working on labor market research could get a direct benefit by having immediate contact with me about their research, help them where I can, and familiarize them with it. The other advantage is that, for better or worse, people outside your immediate research environment pay a lot more attention to work that has been acknowledged in the way that scientific work is acknowledged by the Nobel Prize, so that you have contact with people outside that both projects the university and influences policy eventually. For example, at the most recent forum that I took part, in Moscow, the Gaidar Forum. I was on the same panel with the Prime Minister. I met the Minister of Finance. We talked about the necessary reforms in the Russian economy, and he was very happy with that interaction. That's the kind of platform that the Nobel Prize can give you, and you can make good use of it.
Our Growth Lab is the part of St. Petersburg State University, and quite many labs and think tanks are affiliated to universities and other educational bodies. And what is your opinion? Is it the best way for think tanks and labs like ours to be affiliated with universities, or maybe a potential development of these think tanks in a structure of ministries or other governmental bodies is better? What is your opinion?
Well, there is scope for different types of labs. There is scope for labs attached to universities and labs attached to ministries, and there is even scope for completely independent labs. They perform different functions, and they should coexist. The difference is that a think tank or a research unit that is based in the ministry is concerned on the regular business of a ministry. For example, the Ministry of Finance that prepares the budget could have a research unit to help it collect information about the budget and help it in the programming of the budget. A research unit that is based at the university steps back from that day-to-day activity, looks at the bigger picture of the economy, and prepares plans of how to move forward in the medium to long term. This is something that ministries are not equipped to do. And in attempts to put a research unit that is given this task into a ministry fail. They always fail. Whereas this type of work can succeed if it's placed at the university and given enough resources, in terms of time mainly, by the academic staff, to divert their research into the interests of the lab. But it's absolutely essential that the lab is populated by researchers of the university who get time release from their teaching and administrative activities at the university in order to devote them to research in the research unit, in the lab. Otherwise, there is no time, you do your work quickly, and you end up being like a unit that could have been placed somewhere else, like a ministry, where they don't give you enough time to do the research.
You are affiliated also with some other universities in different countries, and you are visiting a lot of different universities all over the world. And in that sense, what is your feeling towards St. Petersburg State University? Can you feel here like at home, or this is just one of the many hundreds of other universities which you are visiting on some regular basis?
No, I have.
And what is your also feeling towards the city of St. Petersburg?
I have different tasks to do, if you like, at different universities. In St. Petersburg is much closer to my heart, if you like, or to my interest, because it's a long-term association. Initially, we agreed it would be for 3 years. I come regularly. I got to know and like the city. I even find your weather interesting, coming from a southern country, because my original country is Cyprus, which is completely different from here. I generally find it interesting. I feel like I belong to the place, in that if I see a success by St. Petersburg State University, I feel proud in a way that I'm associated with it. You know, it feels like my own place in many ways. I mean, now that I'm beginning to learn how it works and all that, I can see that there is scope for improving the situation on the basis of the more successful Western universities like my own, the London School of Economics. I spent a year at Harvard University, a year at Berkeley, Princeton, a year. I mean, I know how they work internally, and I can see it. I know, you know, there are different kinds of problems here that what you face there. In a sense, the transition is much more recent here than it was there. But generally, it's not like going to a place, giving a lecture or doing something and leaving. You know, I feel that I belong to the place, and I want other people who are here to feel in the same way and have an interaction that is a long-term interaction.
And the last question, could you advise something to the fresh students who just starting the study at the Faculty of Economics of St. Petersburg State University? What can you recommend to them? Because quite a number of alumni of the Faculty of Economics has become the government officials or leaders of some big companies, and so those students who just started education here possibly in future will become also quite important persons for the economic development of Russia. So
my advice, actually, given the way that university education generally has been going, and the way that societies generally get organize themselves, if we take into account that changes in the world economy and world politics are much faster now than they used to be before, you know, associated with the opening up of economies, globalization, with the collapse of the centrally planned model of a closed economy. Given all these changes, my advice to new students entering university now is to approach their studies in as broad a mind as possible, not to think now of what they want to do in future and focus on learning about that, but try to learn as much as possible, as widely as possible, spread across their studies, at least until their final year of study. And then start thinking about specialization. See what their interests are and see where their talents are. Because everyone who has the ability to come into a university like the St. Petersburg State University has some talent which can be used effectively somewhere along the line. But they don't know what it is now. Even if they think they know, they don't know it. They need to work on it. And the way to work on it is to have as broad a spirit, as broad a mind when they're approaching their studies now.